Yeah, as you can see, Paul Bryans is back with us once again. And I guess it was, when did you say it was last year? You did an exhibit of images of people on Bainbridge Island. And so today's presentation is a follow-up to that. Paul's going to be showing us images of people from other parts of the world. So the exhibit is available on the Senior Center website. So if you consider this a preview, you can go back and look at the images again while they're up on the website. They're really beautiful, really striking. And with that, we'll turn it over to Paul so he can begin talking about his work.
Well, I'm a very active member of the Photo Club here on Bainbridge, and we're always been very grateful to the Senior Center for hosting us. And a year and a half ago or so, we were given permission to set up a gallery inside the entrance, which has been great until the epidemic closed it down. And I was supposed to be the next person to hang my pictures. I have them all printed. They're sitting here beside me, but the virus came along and knocked it out. So thanks to Reed for giving us the idea of putting them online. And this is just a collection of photos I made while traveling over the years that are candid shots of people. And when I first was traveling a lot, I didn't really do that very much. I was a little shy about it, for one thing. And then I was trying to depict, document the places that I'd been and buildings. And I was teaching world civilizations for a while, so I was actually collecting photos of famous locales. I never have been one of these people that goes into an art gallery, though, and takes pictures of the art, because you can always find better reproductions of those online, and there's not much point in it. Although what I have done a lot of is take pictures of the decor inside the museum, and I'll show you one of those, things that don't get photographed very often. But after a while, I got into this thing of just snapping people on the street. Now, this can be controversial. In the United States, there is no law against taking pictures of people of any age out in public, as long as they're out in public. Now, you could offend people, but some people think that you have to have signed permission or something. The only time you need that is if you're doing commercial photography and you're selling the image. Then you need permission. But for news coverage, for instance, when the news guys go out and photograph a bunch of people on the street, they don't go around and ask each one, okay, can we put this in the paper tomorrow? And the same is true for your photographs. But I try not to take pictures of people that will embarrass them or offend them. And these days, tend not to take pictures of young children because people are very concerned about that. In Europe, it's a little different. Every country has its own laws about what you can do with pictures of people. Germany is the most restrictive, although when I was there during, what's it called, the big beer festival in the fall. Anyway, everybody's dressed up in costumes. They're expecting to have their pictures taken. They wanted to. So these are just what I like best of the ones that I've done. It's a small collection, and this won't take very long. But this is in Florence. So this is the Signoria, Piazza della Signoria in Florence, or Firenze. And we were sitting waiting for our lunch, which took a very long time. And so I was spending a lot of time looking at the tables next to us. And this waiter, so picturesque, came up. The table was full of, I think, 3 couples, it looked to be in their 20s, who were all incredibly good looking. And I was tempted to photograph them. But he was having fun talking with them. And he's got the stem of a wine glass in his right hand there. And I'm sorry that I didn't get a little more of the wine glass and chopped off his fingers. That's one of the bad things about candid photography, you know, the unexpected. You don't always have time to frame the shot, ideally, but his smile and those brilliant sunglasses that he's got hanging around his neck. There's just so much about that I really love this picture. If you've ever been here, you'll know that way over, I think actually on the left, is a reproduction of Michelangelo's David, and lots of people do selfies in front of it, but it's a really crappy copy. You have to pay to go into a museum to see the original thing. It's not out anymore in the Signoria. So yeah, change to the next one. I have a long, complicated history, which I won't go into with Russia, that has to do with a book that I published called now I'm blanking. Yeah, Nuclear Holocaust: Atomic War in Fiction, and it involved a lot of reading of 1,400 books that depicted the nuclear war. And I got invited to speak at a conference in Moscow, and that connected me with somebody who had gone through the Chernobyl disaster. And she connected me with coming to visit her in Kiev, or Kyiv as they call it. And so we made a trip, my wife and I, several years ago, to Kiev and St. Petersburg. And we were just going to this park in St. Petersburg, and I saw this woman painting by this pond. And I thought, oh, that's great. And her little daughter next to her. It wasn't until I got home and looked at the picture more closely, I realized the daughter is also doing art. She's got a little painting or drawing in front of her that she's working on. I thought, oh, wow, what a combination. So, and of course, it's got her paint tubes and her coffee and her water and everything down in front of her. So, absolutely one of my favorites. Next. This was a trip to Spain, our only trip to Spain, and we concentrated on the south and the historic cities, and Sevilla, or Seville. It was a very hot day, and we took refuge in this park, just partly get out of the beating down sun. And I looked over and I saw this couple with their legs intertwined, and look at the vines that are intertwined on the left. So when I showed this before, I actually labeled it intertwined. So I had my camera up and thinking, should I take this picture? I mean, it's really a great picture, but I don't know if I'd really be intruding here. And the guy looked straight at me, gave me a big grin, and leaned in for a kiss. So he was posing. And the roses in the foreground got a little blown out and overexposed, but otherwise I was pretty happy with this. This is also an example you'll see in a lot of my pictures where I use a lot of what's called negative space. That is, instead of cropping in and showing what you think of as the subject right smack dab in the center, I like to have people in a larger context and give a sense of the space around them. And of course, the support up at the top there above the vines gives a natural lid to the painting, and then the white down below does the same thing for the bottom. So it gives it more of a sense of cohesion. What's next? Well, I was with my friend David Sigmund in Seattle. We were trying to get to the Cinerama Theater in his car, and we usually would walk on, but he had other errands to do. He needed the car. So we got stuck in traffic in front of Target. And we were sitting there for quite a long time, and this musician was out front playing his guitar. He wasn't singing or anything. You see, he's smoking, and was so spectacular. I mean, the purple splotches on his backpack go with his hair. You know, the colors and the red background just jumped out. This is the customer pickup area, and I actually deleted part of an R that was over on the extreme left. It got sliced out because I just wanted the word pickup to be all by itself. And, you know, a guitar pickup is what you put on an electric guitar to feed it to an amplifier. and he's a pickup musician. I mean, you could think of it in a lot of different ways. So I often find things amusing. I see. I took 2 or 3 pictures of him, and this is the one I like the best. I kind of wish that that little bit of blue hair hadn't fallen right in his eye. If we could have seen his eye more clearly, it would have been nice. But otherwise, this was my favorite one. When I'm doing this kind of thing, I will often use what's called burst mode, in which the camera is just continuously, every split second, taking another shot. I didn't on this. I just took repeated shots. But if there's a moving activity going on, burst mode is great, because you can wind up with maybe 100 shots with just by holding a button down, and then you choose the one you like the best. And if you're really good with Photoshop, you can take details from one and put it in another too. Next. This was in a museum in Paris, and it has a very long name, which I can't remember at the moment. This most recent trip to Paris, we decided to skip the Louvre and other famous museums that we'd been to before and go to ones that we hadn't experienced. And so we had a lot of interesting things. But there was a rainy day, and this Japanese tourist with her yellow raincoat and her umbrella sticking out of her coat at the bottom there was checking her cell phone. It's really hard to take pictures of people now who aren't on their phones, especially get a large crowd. But the aesthetics of her surroundings and that yellow coat just really grabbed me. A lot of dynamics going on in the floor, and then a curling wave of wrought iron on the staircase to the left. And I included a lot of negative space in this one because I think it just gives it a lot more drama. It also is somewhat of an Asian aesthetic. I don't know if she was from Japan, but she looked Japanese, but it was kind of a tribute to that kind of aesthetic. And again, you can see where I've chosen where to cut it off on the left. It was mostly determined by wanting to get most of that spiral on the staircase in. But the diamond and the square down in the lower right-hand corner create a stopping point too. Next. So I worked with a group of faculty who taught a course called World Civilizations at Washington State University for many years, and it was required for a while of all freshmen. There were 2 classes. I taught the early one up to the Middle Ages. This is my friend and colleague Paul Smith, who was trained as a musicologist, and we actually had a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to take us to India. And we went to both India and China. And this is in Delhi. And Paul wanted to get a snake charmer's flute, and which he did. But this is just not a snake charmer. This is just a regular wooden flute. And so he was getting a little lesson on playing it from the vendor here, who's got 2 in his hands. And again, shot's not perfect. I got the top of his head chopped off and a bit of his shoe. This is with a pre-digital camera. This is one that I've scanned. So it's the earliest of the photos you'll see. But I just love this sort of interaction between the 2 of them with the flutes right in the center, making that V shape. That's the rest of our group standing around in the back with their feet showing. Next. And that most recent trip to Paris, we stayed in Montmartre, which where we had never stayed before. It's had a reputation as kind of a risky place to see. It's not far away from a lot of sex shops and striptease and pickpockets and so on. But actually, there's an area where we were able to rent an apartment very cheap, and it was really nice. This is right around the corner from where we were staying. This is on the last evening that we were there. And I saw this sunset lighting up the buildings in the background. And I thought, oh, what gorgeous colors. So I snapped it. Now, the nice thing about shooting in digital and using what's called RAW format is that you can capture a lot more detail than the camera can see or can display. And originally, those two girls walking along the sidewalk are young women, and most of the people at the tables under the bistro sign were invisible. It was just black. But I knew the info was in there, so I used a raw editor to lighten up that part of it and bring them out. Saw the guy smoking his cigarette on the left, and then it timed the sky down a little bit to make it less bright, so that you got more of the golden color. It was just pure coincidence that the colors on the signs for the bistro matched the color of the sunset shining on the building. And that was one of my favorite things about it. To me, this is really Paris. Dining on the sidewalk, historic old buildings. Wish you didn't always have to have parked cars in the way, but that's pretty much unavoidable. Next. This is in the Italian city of Lucca. And we had just climbed a famous tower there, which gives you a view over the whole city. Lucca's not a big tourist town, but it's an interesting place to visit. It has a city wall that surrounds it that survived from ancient times, and a lot of old buildings. And this street singer isn't actually from Lucca. She comes into the city, and we bought one of the recordings, which you can see in her suitcase down there in front of her. And she had a terrific voice, and she's really, really good. And she was singing specifically 19th century songs of the kind that immigrants from Italy to the United States like to sing. I mean, she wasn't just trying to do something cheesy to please the tourists. She had a definite musical agenda. She was also incredibly cute, of course, and she had her feet angled in that way that was just charming. This, and it's got this piece of this ledge up at the upper left. It's made a nice support, solid. Some people at the photo club said, "Oh, you should have cropped that suitcase out down at the bottom." No way. That's very much a part of the street singer's apparatus. The only thing I'm maybe not crazy about is the bright green pillow. I don't think it goes really with the look of everything else, but I'm glad she was comfortable. Next. So I've only been to Hawaii twice. Once many years ago before I took Kauai, before a big hurricane managed to destroy a lot of the sites. And a friend of ours from WSU has a place over there, and she invited us to come and visit. And so enough time had passed, things had grown back, and we were able to have interesting time. This was early March, I think, or late February, one or the other. So this is what winter's like in Kauai. It was about 90 degrees a lot of the time. And on this particular beach, a lot of people, and I think these were probably not visitors, but locals, father and son portrait, which I thought was really touching, and just like framing him in between the trees with the inflatable boat in the foreground. And that's the color of the water. It's really amazing. What's not accurate is the sky. It wasn't white, it was blue. It's just too bright. The camera could not capture the color in the sky. So, if I was really patient and skillful, I would go in and replace all those whites with blue, but most people wouldn't notice. Next. This is also on Kauai. There's this bicycle and hiking path along the seashore, which is, I took a lot of pictures, and the clouds began to come in. It actually started raining not long after this. And this husky guy on his bicycle just caught my eye. You don't see that many black tourists in Hawaii, but there are some. And I thought it was just a neat see. And again, I included deliberately lots of sky. You can see a little tiny blue up at the top there in a couple pieces. But I like the contrast between the threatening sky and the lit up foreground, and the motion of the bicycle and the stillness of the path. I often like a bit of tension in my photographs. Next. This one I hesitated about it. I don't think it's one of my best photographs, but I was so taken by it. We're on the banks of the Seine in Paris on the Ile de la Cité, which is this island in the middle of the Seine where Notre Dame is and is now in ruins. We were there shortly before it burned. Well, a little more than shortly. Anyway, it's turned out to be a very popular place for wedding parties, couples to come and have their wedding portraits taken. So the woman on the top left is the photographer, and then this is the bridal pair, and there was somebody else who is having their shots taken at the same time, showing Notre Dame in the background. So they took a break for lunch. So they've got this takeout that they're eating with chopsticks. And I just love the intercultural nature of it. We saw lots of, these are probably Chinese. There are a tremendous number of Chinese tourists and at this time in Paris. And so, again, just the I wouldn't call it a clash, but the contrast between fine French dining and eating with chopsticks.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot of fun. Now, this is the only one from which I did a lot of creative editing. I'm not one of these people that puts bizarre filters on things and manipulates my pictures a lot. But this was from the Fremont Solstice Parade, which is famous for the nude bicycle ride that precedes it, which actually took place this year even without the Solstice Parade. And I actually have up on YouTube, if you go look for my name on YouTube, I have a slideshow of the bicycle ride as well, which is pretty interesting because it's not that the people are nude, it's that they're painted up with body paint in the most incredible ways. But the actual parade is an arts parade, and it's an interesting parade in that you're not allowed to have any words in any real language displayed. So, and there are no troops of Boy Scouts or sheriff's cars going past or anything. They're all art, no motorized vehicles. So the floats are all towed by hand. And there are groups marching and playing music, and you have to sort of guess what their theme is. So Sidewalk, and this woman was dancing along with another group who were dancing to some music that's being played ahead of her. She was really striking, and I thought, I want to make a picture out of that, but there's all these people in the background with their legs and shorts and stuff, and it's just horribly distracting. So I blurred the heck out of the background. If you look down between her legs, you can see the pavement is still sharp. You can see little grains of rock there. But in the background, I really blurred it just to make it less distracting and darkened it a little bit. And then I found this, this is from Photoshop Elements, and it allows you to do what they call out of frame. So, and it took forever. I had to select her figure and her fingers and bits of her hair and everything, separate it from the rest of the photograph so I could sharpen her and bring it out, and then create that frame. And the first version I did, it was narrower than this, and she looked a little trapped. And so to make it more burst out and give her some room to move, I widened the gray area around it. So I don't do this sort of thing hardly ever, but I was pretty pleased with this one. Next. Well, this is the same occasion. There was this woman sitting next to us in a wheelchair with a pair of fairy wings on her back and this spectacular painting of a butterfly on her cheek, and she was blowing bubbles and just really in the spirit of the parade. This one I didn't do a lot of editing with. I just wanted it to be a candid shot. You can see some of the bubbles right on her shoulder too, in front of her shirt. And it's always fun to shoot bubbles. Next. This is in Ferrara. Ferrara is another of these old cities with a city center where automobiles, unless they're on official business or delivering goods or something and I'm not allowed. And so everybody rides bicycles, almost everybody. There are tons and tons of bicycles. It's hard to take a picture in Ferrara without having bicycles. So we were sitting at a cafe table when this guy came around the corner in front of this bookstore. And so I just snapped a shot, and I didn't get he was coming a little too fast for me to get the bottom of his front tire. But I just love the contrast between the typical shot of, an athletic young person working out on a bicycle and this guy smoking his cigarette, just getting around. And the camera did a really good job of freezing the shot in this case. Next one. And this is another shot of bicycles in Ferrara. I was just shooting this alley, and it's on the Via Mazzini. He was a famous author. So I was interested in catching that sign and then the hanging pot of flowers. And these two women crossed each other just the right moment to get caught. So sometimes you get lucky. I took a ton of pictures out on this walk. We actually got lost wandering around Ferrara. But this is my favorite other bicycle shot. Next. On the way home from our last trip to Europe, my daughter, who was living in Brooklyn then, hosted us to show us through Central Park, which was her favorite place to hang out in New York, where she has lived for most of her adult life. She's now living in Bend, Oregon. It's the biggest contrast imaginable. But when we went by, people on a Sunday go out and rent these boats and row around. And I took several pictures here, and I just really like this one with the bridge going across. There's some people in the upper left among the trees you can make out just barely if you look really strong. And the couple in the boat is looking over at the two women on the right-hand boat. And the woman in the green dress is taking a photo of her friend who's rowing with her cell phone. Next. And I think this is the last one. This is from years ago when we were up north of Seattle. What's the town? Yeah, near La Conner. And the sun began to go down, and I thought, oh, let's find a place to see the sunset. So I found out that there was this place, Bayview State Park. So we raced out there in the car to get it. And so we were just sitting waiting for the sun to go down. And this couple was near us just doing the same thing on the rocks. And they just looked terrific. But they were, again, pretty dark. You couldn't really see them much at all in the original shots. So again, shooting in RAW, I was able to bring the foreground out and realize, oh, I've got some Queen Anne's lace in the foreground there that I didn't even know was in the shot. What was wrong with this, there were two things wrong with this photo that I really needed to fix. One was it was much taller than this, and the water occupied a much larger proportion of the photo. And so I used some Photoshop Elements trick to squeeze that water so the waves are more compressed than they were in fact, so that they don't bulk so large and dwarf the figures in the foreground. The other thing that was wrong is that there's an oil refinery over on the other shore, and it had all these lights, dozens and dozens of them. And so I went through with the healing brush tool and took out every single one of them. So the distraction is gone, and then had the sunset. And I think that's it. Yep. So, any questions?
So lovely.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody got any questions?
I'm wondering if you, how you started to do photo manipulation. Did that come through the Photo Club, or had you started to do that on your own?
The Photo Club, when I first joined it, most people were still taking film shots using film cameras. It was back in 2008. And those people who were being pioneers and doing digital photography, which I wasn't doing yet, but I was interested in it, formed a noontime group on Wednesdays or something down at the fire station to talk about digital editing and so on. And I got into it through there, and I learned a lot from those guys. So I started out with Photoshop Elements, and I've kind of stuck with it. A lot of people look down their noses at it because Photoshop, the more expensive one, which now you can only rent by the year. You can't buy it and be done with it. I had used Photoshop before for years because I had a faculty discount from WSU, but when I retired, the discount went away. WSU was too cheap to give it to their retirees. If I'd been in the U of W, I would have been able to keep getting it. So I moved down to Elements, and I'd never been unhappy with that. So.
And is the Photo Club meeting right now? And if someone was interested in finding out about
yes,
it?
They meet.
You know how
yeah, they meet on the second Wednesday of every month. We just had our meeting last month. And visitors are welcome. And right now there's about 15 or 16 of us who are doing this kind of meeting where pictures are shown up on the screen and then commentators. I was one of the commentators last week. And we sometimes have the theme. And last time it was the color purple. So a lot of purple things. But we're going to be doing some other activities too. But yeah, the Photo Club is always interested in getting new members, but also people who aren't photographers, but just are interested in seeing the photographs. And our big event every year is the exhibit at the Senior Center in the 4th of July. And we usually get anywhere from 300 to 500 visitors at that time. And everybody puts their best prints up for the year. And of course, that was canceled for this year. So
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Victor,
Paul.
Thank you.
Good job.